I learned a new opening in a rapid game today. I was black, and in this position I'm used to seeing D3 or D4 or castles, but my opponent played B4, which I learned after the game is called bird's attack, and it's actually the third most popular move in this position. So I retreated my bishop to B6. I want to keep an eye on this important central square and F2. I was worried about him playing B5 to kick my knight away from defending my pawn, but I could attack the bishop. He could take the pawn anyway and protect his bishop, and also he has an attack on F7, and this looked really messy, and I was worried about this line without having played this before. But my opponent didn't play B5 in that position. He played A4 trying to trap my bishop. That's a mistake though. It's a blunder because he gives up this pawn on E4. And I don't have to save my bishop right away because now I have an attack on F2. So he castles to protect F2. I take the time to play D5 and hit his bishop, and he makes another mistake. He puts it on B3. This is too passive. He needed to put it on B5 to pin this knight and get some counterplay against the E5 pawn. Putting it on B6 allowed a powerful sacrifice. I played knight takes F2. Normally you don't want to give up two minor pieces for a rook and a pawn like this, but in this case it works because of the follow-up E4 kicking the knight away, and that allows my queen to come into H4 with check, and now I'll have a powerful attack. He puts his king on G1. That allows me to win a knight in this position, so I'm going to get my material back. Bishop to G4 attacks the queen, and the queen cannot leave the attack because he would get mated here on E1. So he's forced to block with his knight, and I take it. The only other option he had in this position after queen to H4 check was king to F1 to keep in contact with his knight. So after bishop to G4 he can move his queen away, but then I take the H2 pawn and I'm threatening to come into H1 and I have a strong attack. The knight's going to get into play here. So either way it looks good for black. So he played king to G1, he gave up the knight. I dropped my bishop back. It's funny, when I analyzed this with an engine after the game, the engine suggested I just castle short here, give up the bishop, and put a rook on the E file, which is already threatening a fork here to win the queen. The knight can come in and the attack is unstoppable. But I can't see to the end of an attack like that, so I didn't go for that engine line. I just dropped my bishop back. D4 is a good move, blocking out my knight, opening up the diagonal for his bishop. Now I castle, bishop to E3, rook Fe8, bishop F2 hitting the queen, calling check. His bishop is now in a pin, so I can play against that. Bishop F5, dropping this pawn, possibly, but I suppose not. I can take the knight and then I'd have an attack on the bishop, so he can't take that pawn. But knight to D2, centralize my other rook, protect my pawn. I can play slowly here. I'm up an exchange and a pawn at this point, so I'm not in any real danger. So here I go after his bishop, threatening to play H4. So he plays H4. I keep the pin, king to G2, maybe king to H2 is a better try, get out of the pin. Bishop D3, threatening to trade minor pieces here on F1. Okay, rook comes to the second rank for defense perhaps. Okay, I trade the minor pieces. Knight to E7. I'm heading for this square to trade further. Bishop hits my queen. I voluntarily go into this pin because at the very least I have some checks. I have queen takes G3 check, or I have knight takes H4 check. So this is a safe move, even though it puts my knight into a pin. Queen to F2 protects the bishop that I was attacking, and I decided to just do some massive trades here on G3 and go into this one endgame. So I'm a pawn up still and an exchange up. But then I make a huge blunder, unforgivable, rook E2, pinning the bishop, or threatening to trade rooks if he drops the bishop back. but of course that blunders to bishop to h7 check. So I often do this. I build up a good winning position and then blunder it away. So I take the bishop, he takes my rook, and now I'm just a pawn up, and the engine actually gives this all zeros on the evaluation. Okay, but I struggle on. I play rook to d7 to guard my second rank. I didn't want his rook landing on e7. So his rook comes in and hits my pawn here. I protect it. f4. I bring my king over. He wants to do something along the back rank, maybe hit these pawns from behind. a6. So possible arrangement of my pawns is like this, with the anchor pawn in the back guarded by my rook. So I want to stay safe and solid. I don't want to blunder a drawn position into a loss. I'd hate to go from a won position all the way to a lost position. He brings his king in. c6, I have a nice solid pawn formation. Rook to f8 check. We dance around back and forth a little bit. I check his king. I get my king up a little bit. I offer the trade of rooks here, and I'm not even sure if the pawn, king and pawn endgame is won with this backward pawn here, but it's certainly not lost. So rook to f3 check, and now I decide to bring my king over to the defense of these pawns and try to activate my rook along this file. And he plays rook to g8. I check. He comes up with his king. I could take this pawn, but that's not a good idea, I don't think, because he's going to take this pawn next, and then this pawn will fall very soon. And he'll get counterplay with this pawn. It'll be very fast while I'm trying to collect up pawns over here on the queen side. So instead I play rook e4 check, and I go for his h-pawn. So I get the h-pawn, he takes my g-pawn with check, check, and I hide over here. I didn't want to hide up here and face this check and then have a worse pawn structure. So I came around the back here. He comes up. Maybe a better move was rook to g3 to protect this pawn. But he drops all the way back. I hit that pawn. He protects it from behind. I advance my h-pawn. He comes up with his king. So I have to do something here. I don't know if this is a won position or not. So I decide to try a breakthrough here by pushing a5. So I'm expecting a capture, and then I'm going to come up and collect these pawns. So he moves his king up, instead attacks my rook. I fall back a square. He takes the pawn next. I come up. He comes forward with his pawn. He's going to try to get some counterplay. Okay, but I don't think it's enough. I think this position is already in my favor. And then after White's next move, the engine tells me that it's completely won for Black. Okay, he does have this passed pawn, but this passed pawn is a little bit faster now. It's my move. He can't trade here without losing. Although I wonder if he can. Let's see. He did not trade. No, I'm too fast. His king is too far away. So I'm going to pick up the pawn. Okay, so my extra pawn is telling in this endgame. So after b4, I think White is lost. He tries to push his pawn. It's a race, but I'm going to queen first. He queens after me, which could be a draw in a king and pawn race like that, but not if there are rooks on the board. Whoever queens first here wins, because I'm going to get the first check, and I have two heavy pieces to finish him off, and it was pretty easy. Queen to e4 check. There's no stopping the heavy pieces here, and I follow a familiar mating pattern I learned as a kid. There we go, and the game was over. So I was happy to get that one back after blundering earlier on. So I hope you enjoyed the game. I learned something about the bird's attack. Thanks for watching.